the November 29th, 2021 Board of Education meeting for Tecumseh Public Schools to order. Let's stand, and Mrs. Moore is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Hilderly, good news.
Good news. Yeah, one thing I didn't put on the agenda because I wanted to make sure that it was going to happen, and that happened today. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention happened today, and I wasn't planning to talk about. So first of all, the first one is that we made application to the LISD for partial funding of the computer programming class here at the high school, and received that funding today in a meeting from the CTE committee. So the district was awarded $55,000 toward that program that will apply this year and then be renewable each year in the coming years. So that's a nice addition, and we're probably going to ask for a couple other courses to be CTE certified for next year in cyber security and gaming. That will potentially be a draw, but it certainly fills a need within the high school. We have several kids who would like to take a CTE class towards some certification or some training, but just don't have 3 hours in their schedule to give to going to the tech center. So I think that it opens a door for a lot more students to become certified in areas without having to attend a tech center program. So very good news there. And then out of some bad news, we had a power outage today at Sutton. That whole, I think, section of the county was out. It happened at a very strange time of the day, around 11 o'clock, where you have to decide, especially with Sutton, not having water, not having toilet facilities, in addition to power and heat. So we made a call to parents and said that we recommend that they come and pick up their child, which most of them did. But the good news out of it was a very big thank you to Kristen DeLand and her staff at the building for just the way that under those circumstances, everyone came together to support what needed to be done in terms of signing kids out, getting them delivered, getting them packed up and out the door. Mrs. Way was there from Acres to assist in that process. But, no panic, no worry, no upset people. Kids were, honestly, I think the kids enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They were, it was just handled as well as it could be handled under the circumstances. So a very big thank you to Mrs. DeLand and her staff and everyone who helped out. Power was back on by about 2 o'clock. The 9 or 10 students who were left enjoyed a movie with Mrs. DeLand, and everyone was safe and everything was handled well. So some bad news, but good things that happened as a result. So that's it.
Okay, now we move into the public comment on agenda items only in accordance with the Open Meeting Act 1986. The board provides opportunity for citizen input during the public comment. Because agendas are full, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Not seeing any public in the audience this evening or administrators looking to make comments on the agenda. I think we can move forward to revisions and approval of the agenda. So we know of two. One is to add monthly financials to the discussion items. And the other is to remove the closed session from the agenda. So we need motions for both or put them together.
So I will make a motion to add the monthly financials and remove the closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Mrs. Brooks,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Simpson.
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Those things are, one is added and one is removed from the agenda. Now for scheduled reports, I am up for the Facilities Committee report. So we met and discussed the capital plan with the ESSER funds. And for the ESSER 3 money, the survey already went out. I saw the parents. I did my own answers there. So once we get that back, then Mike continues to work on the plan of what we're going to do with all the ESSER funds. But he's very far along, and it's good to have him on the team. We talked about the sculpture garden and building the wall. Tom wants to stick with one local vendor, so the committee asked him to put a summary together as to why he doesn't want to go out and get additional bids. So he'll provide that in the next committee report, and then we'll bring that to the board because it is something at a level of amount that should require additional quotes. And then we also talked about the Sutton controls, just asking him to go out and get the additional bids so that we could wrap that up quickly and get it scheduled and done by the spring. So that's about it. Okay. Moving on to discussion items. Rick, you want to tell us about the donations? The first one from Martin's Home Center.
We have a donation from Martin's Home Center, who's obviously always very good to the schools. In this case, they are donating $300 to the robotics team 3773, and we hope that you will accept that under action items with the district's thanks. And then we have another donation to the robotics team of $100 from FNS Landscaping, team 3773, and we recommend that you accept that under action with the district thanks.
Lynn, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Would the monthly financials that we added be under reports?
We could do it as a discussion.
Whichever.
I think we did it as a discussion.
Did
item
we?
Under the motion.
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't we do that before we get to the last two items? So monthly financials.
Sure. In your packet should be cash on hand for October 31st, 2021. The total is $11,447,997.33, and that is all bank accounts. Total accounts payable or check runs for the month of October is $1,374,041.22. Total revenue, this is from July 1st through October 31st, is $13,851,850.49. Expenditures, total expenditures for that same period is $10,090,362.08. Also included in your board packet was the comparative revenue and expenditure reports comparing current fiscal year 2022 to the prior fiscal year 2021. Any questions on the monthly financials?
I just have a process question.
Sure.
So you put those together. Does Tim, as the treasurer, review them? And then,
He does not, but we can certainly add that to the process.
I'm just asking a procedural question. I don't have an opinion. Becky, I don't know if you, as the chair of the finance committee, have any.
We've
need to
always
add
just,
anything else to that.
we've just always reviewed it in meeting, but I mean, that's of course, I think previously when John was in that position with his background, he probably reviewed it closer. But that would be something if Tim was interested in doing, of course, he's welcome to. He's part of the budget committee, so as you know.
Any questions from anybody on the board during the monthly statements? Okay, hearing none. We'll go to the next discussion item of the Building Futures Committee recommendation. In our board packet, there was a comparison done by the bond consultant. Rick, do you want to walk us through that? Or?
Right, so provided to the board, obviously in your packet, but I believe that I emailed it previous to that. because the question at the presentation 3 weeks ago was, what are the lengths of time that the bonds would be extended if the board selected to go for an extension vote in May? And that's the information that's in your packet. Looking it over, obviously over time, the bonds disappear sometime into the future, but ending, if I remember correctly, 2053 would be the last of the end. I got to enlarge it so that I can read it. There we go. Yeah, 2053. So the last year collected would be in 2052. And going back from there, you can see how much and what amounts are collected over that time. So we would be asking the public to extend the bonds approximately 30 years into the future, but all expiring over a different time span. And I would simply just remind the board that at this time, that is all the board is asking that's all being asked of the board, is to consider extending that bond. There was much in the presentation that the committee brought forth that didn't have a lot of detail. It talks about the focus of the program being unified K-4 elementary on the Tecumseh Acres site. There were recommendations for design so that the building was built in two different pods to be focused on the early and the upper elementaries. They made recommendations about portions of the building being rededicated to some of the historical building names. There's also parts of the program that renovate the middle school as it is, with some upgraded security for the entrances, the two primary entrances, and then also exterior upgrades for parking and traffic flow. And then high school, an addition of the orchestra space with a donation from the Friends of the Tecumseh Orchestra and the Wilson Foundation, totaling over $500,000. And then an auxiliary gym and some upgrades to the athletic facilities to include a locker room and concession area that would service with restrooms that would service the softball and soccer and baseball area. So that's as much detail as in the program. At this point, not asking the board to pick carpet colors or furniture or anything like that. Just our recommendation is to follow the recommendation of the Building Futures Committee and ask the community to extend the bonds in the May vote. In terms of timeline, we have a date set with the Department of Treasury from the state of Michigan to validate whether or not we can go out for that bid or for that vote, and that's coming up in 2 weeks. So we have to have board action one way or the other at this meeting. And then in terms of the information that was provided, I can try to answer questions. Kelly also might be prepared to answer some of your questions about the extension of the bond debt and what that means for the community.
I'm trying to remember in the meetings, I know we talked about some upgrades to the pool. Did that continue in the?
Yeah, there would be renovations to the pool. $2.5 million, I think, was dedicated to, and as we just saw last month, the Dectron unit that deals with the air quality and pool temperature, as well as the boiler. Right now, we have a single boiler system. The upgrade would be to a double boiler system so that if one fails, there's a backup system. And then you can power each at 50%, or you can have one run at a time. You get longer life out of the things then. And there would also be upgrades to the locker facilities and the pool surface area and that sort of thing. There was discussion in those meetings about possibly upgrading the pool to a competition pool with more lanes. Where that building is located and the amount of work that would need to be done, it really doesn't fit in the scope of the project. So just upgrades to the current facility in the footprint that it's in.
I know I was on the board originally when the first bond issue passed with the high school, and there was a proposal in there, and I don't think that became part of it. And I think they broke it down into a lot of sections, but I'm not sure how it didn't happen. But there was a plan to put an addition into that area where it's kind of like a parking lot or a yard, and do some more to upgrade it to a community type pool where it could still, upgrade the lanes so they could still have swimming competition, but not, Olympic size or like we were just talking about. But people were very interested in that. It was like, it'd be an area for older people to swim, and it was warmer water, and then there was a kids area to play and like kiddie pool type stuff.
And I think that we kind of talked about that in the meeting, but I think we've also got some competition with, there's a pool at the new, was it YMCA?
The Y pool and then the
this
potential of the
Phoenix project. So I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that we
And
necessarily.
the Y pool has a children's area as well, and
Yeah,
I think so.
I haven't been there. I just know it exists.
okay.
yeah, there's a
But we
children's
definitely need
area and then
upgrades, no matter how.
Right, the upgrades need to happen, but yeah.
Right. And the architects felt like the $2.5 million would get us to high functioning pool area that would be adequate. It will not cause, add anything to the
Right.
square footage of the pool.
So I think maybe to confirm previous questions. So we are asking to put or to renew the same millage to the public. And then we let our constituency vote and decide. But that the existing long-term debt, and the schedule does show some existing long-term debt that goes, I think, through 2025, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that we would use the renewal of the millage to pay that off and then start borrowing so that we could. And then we would just take whatever gap of the millage is left from paying off that long-term debt and use that for new debt to start the projects within the community. So it's not a stack on top of what we already have as debt. It's kind of like that. The debt that's left is less than the current millage. So it would be that gap that we would then be allowed to borrow, and then as it goes down, we could borrow more.
Right.
So,
And the goal is to not raise any taxes.
It would be a zero increase
Zero
for any
increase
taxpayer
straight across.
based
That was
on,
the goal.
the mills that are levied. The
Right.
only,
To the rate.
difference would be the, increase in property values over time.
Right.
But in terms of the mills that are levied, it would be a zero increase.
I think that's important to keep pounding that message that that's the way that it is. It's nothing new. We're recapturing funds that we can help bring our district a little further into the future.
I have no idea what you guys are looking at when you're reading all this. I'm on page 3 of the email that Veronica sent out, or Rick sent out that I'd requested. I'm guessing that's where we're at because it shows tax year 21 through 28. There's $12 billion in outstanding debt that gets paid down during that time. So are you saying, I'm not getting what you're saying because I can't hear you half the time. Are we rolling this amount of money into a new millage, or are we just paying this down? And then when that's paid down, we accelerate the new millage payment.
So we're asking to renew the millage, which is the rate. So we'll get the same, well, except for property values that we don't control. They will continue paying the same tax rate, and we'll get that money. First, we have to use that money. So let's say, what's the millage? 7.5.
Say your house is almost paid off and you
7.2 mils.
remortgage it and extend your mortgage for,
So
that's
like-
really what we're doing.
So let's say that
Your
what's
payment
left
stays the
is,
same.
we have basically 7 mills. Let's say that what's left is 3 mills. Then we can borrow new through the new bond, the 4 mills, and use that. And then when the next long-term debt falls off and you're at 2.5 mills of long-term debt left of the old stuff, then you can kind of, we're gonna fill in that 7.2 mills. But it's not new. So we're not saying we still owe 3 mills and we're adding on 7.2 mills. We're saying just continue the 7.2 mills and we'll manage the long-term debt that's still existing, pay it off, and use the gap to do new things to the district. Does that make sense? I could draw it out, but I don't know how that works.
It's kind of like refinancing your house.
Yeah, it's
keeping
an
the payment the
extension.
same, but you're
So in other
borrowing the
words,
equity.
what we levied in the year 2000, we're going to extend out to 2050 now?
If you look on the the far right column,
Which one are we looking at?
That's what I don't get.
page 3 of 6.
Okay. All right, I'm looking at page 4, so let me get to 3 and rotate it.
You'll see that the 7.2 mils carries as is until 2028, 29. And then it starts to creep.
Is that where it says existing UT debt 12,165? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
What does UT stand for?
Tessie.
It's not unlimited tax, is it?
I mean, I don't think we have to understand the
Yeah,
exact,
um,
I mean, we're not,
I do.
Unlimited
it's
tax.
extending
Unlimited
the debt
tax.
so we can build a new school.
Okay.
Yeah. How much more do you need?
But if you, like I said, on the far right-hand column, it's 7.2 mils carries out to 2029.
Okay.
And then it starts to diminish a little bit at a time, 6.98, 6.7, so on and so on. So only extending the 7.2 mils out for another 9 years. And then it continually diminishes over time until it's
But the mills
gone.
don't drop. People keep paying, they keep paying the same amount
Right,
until it's
right.
all the
And
way
we could
paid
just
off.
pay off the
So
debt
nothing
faster.
changes from the past 20 years. It just continues on another 20.
And then it appears to get the mills needed to actually diminish beginning in 2029
Yes.
or
Correct.
2030, 2029.
So we can either pay off debt faster or utilize it to fulfill the full project plan. Which, knowing the timing of the last bond, maybe some projects were,
If you look at page 5 of your packet, this is the page that's. our
What
estimated-
packet? I've got more
Oh,
papers.
this- The
The
same.
PFM.
This
PFM.
PFM
Okay.
packet. On page 5 of this 6-page document, this is our mills needed on our existing debt,
Okay.
assuming that we don't go out for a vote. So our current mills for this fiscal year that we're in, the 21-22 year, is 7.2.
Mhm.
Should we not go out to a vote, it would drop to 3.48 in the next year, and then 3.41, and then 3.09.
But no one would get a relief in their taxes.
Yeah, they
It would just be paid off faster. The taxes would still be what they're at.
Well, no, they would get relief in their taxes if we didn't go out for the bond. But then if you
Oh,
go
okay,
back to
as it started
existing page
dropping.
3,
Okay.
you can see, so the 22-23 year, we're keeping the mills at 7.2. We're recommending to continue the existing mills.
hmm
We're adding the 3.72, and that's how we're funding the construction.
Okay.
The 3.72, then the next year, the 4.5.
That's what I thought I read, but
Yeah.
this isn't like,
But we are refining $19 million
Right.
out of the 70, 75 million. I think the voters need to know that when we
you
advertise
say
this.
that
I'm
again?
all for putting this out to the voters to decide, but I
Will
think
you
that
Yeah,
repeat
we've got to
that?
be clear about
Yeah,
that.
we're refining almost $20 million. And I think we need to be very clear to the voters that they understand this, that we're taking this $20 million and we're going to refi it. So 75 million of this project, 20 million of it is a refi.
Right.
And the voters need to understand.
Stuff we already owe. Yeah.
Yes, which would be dropping off here shortly in 2023, it looks like, or 2022. It would be dropping, or 2022.
So basically we currently get 7.2 mils,
Correct. There, and those-
but we're getting to a point. That's why we're asking to put it on the ballot where it's gonna drop just like it would drop on the schedule.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're asking, please let us keep it at 7.2
For another
so that
7
we can
years,
refinance as well as do new projects. But that's, after,
8 years.
if we choose as a board to vote to put it on the ballot in May, then our job as the board becomes to inform those types of facts to the public. And then the yes committee is more of the,
How many years has it been at 7.2? Would that have been from the original or was it?
Yeah, would have been since 2003 was the
I want to
last.
say 2015, there was a refinance. More did one, that one, so at least since 2015.
And do we know what the
Original
rate
would have been
is
2003.
today that we're paying?
The
Versus-
7.2.
No, that's the mills.
Oh,
but
the
what's
interest
the
rate.
interest rate,
Oh, the interest rate?
yeah. And what they're saying, they're projecting the interest rate will be for the 70, for the loan?
Just look at the right copy there. That would be- Current interest rate's 5%.
But projected to go higher.
And they're projecting what? What are they,
3.75,
for,
which he thinks is conservative to our favor.
That might even be lower than that.
It might even be lower because this will be a qualified bond, which has some protections from the state. So when I went to the MASB conference, they shared a statistic, if this helps you all. For a qualified bond that does not raise the millage, just maintains the millage, there's a 92% acceptance rate by the public across the state. So, but when you drop the qualified aspect of it, like if you go out to do the bond on your own without the state qualification, it drops considerably. And the same if you're asking, obviously, for more millage. That's troublesome. So, but again, as Mr. Hilderly stated, tonight's vote is to put it on the ballot. And it's just to maintain the millage that they're paying today versus letting the drop.
Well, I get that, but I think it's important for me to know before I vote yes or no, what exactly the plan is. And that's my concern. The other concern I have is, I think that's been answered. The other question I have, our club up north, we just passed a big dues, it's similar, except it's just a smaller body to update our lodge up there. And my wife's on that committee. And they just told us the firm we've hired, kind of our TMP, to do that, said count on 20% cost increases the first 3 years is what they're projecting because of labor and material. Has anybody said anything that?
Yes.
I
So,
think somebody asked that.
It was
one of our
included-
committee meetings.
I think
and
they
he
tacked
was-
on 10%
Mhm.
above, wasn't that what 10% above what our initial, so when we met almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they added 10% on based on what's going on right now.
so instead of 75 million, then we're looking at more like,
That's already incorporated.
He added that in the
It's in now.
figures.
but 2 years ago. So what,
No,
The 75 million will be captured. It just won't go as far as
Right.
it would have 2 years ago when
Right.
this committee started looking at things. So
We-
that's
we
why
had to
some of the
take some
things
things
were cut
out.
out of the program.
okay,
that
so
the
that's already been
75
done.
million could
Yes.
cover
Frank
it.
Anaki asked
there's a
that question.
10% there's a 10% pad in there on that, and there's some padding on some other things that likely won't be quite as much as they try to do conservative.
And I think that's important to get out to the public too, that, had we been able to do that, we are cutting some things that would have originally
Right.
been part of that plan to be good stewards, right?
Right.
We're anticipating that already. It's important to know that, like his point, that this money is being, we know there's going to be costs. It's factored in.
And if the bond's approved, then we start the process of, so we have the Building Futures Committee concept, but it goes back into planning. Part of that is prioritization, so that if you get to what you're talking about, Greg, where it said 10%, it's 20%, then, it's very clear
Right.
to future boards as well as to the public, this was the priority that kind of happened with that.
Next thing they were told to plan on is looking at delays in the renovation, taking an extra 15 to 20% more time because of supply chain issues and stuff. I mean, that works for our club. Nobody's really staying in there much.
But you're talking present, not, I mean, first it goes to vote in May, then it's a year in the planning stage. I mean, they wouldn't even break ground on this thing for probably 2 years, so.
Right, but
Hopefully
these are
things
all
are a little
current.
straighter.
But when the vote's now, and these are all current issues that we have, it may make people think this isn't a good time to do this because of supply chain problems and things like that. I mean, everybody knows what it's like I just put $5,300 into a steel roof on my small pole building. The one down at the bottom of the hill, it's smaller this year, $6,000.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's.
but we don't know what it's gonna be like in.
Prices-
No, we don't.
prices aren't going
But are
down,
we-
that's
But
for
we know
sure.
what's happening right now, so are we planning for that, and are we looking at that before we go and ask for the money and then just say,
But I think though, that's why you see the one new elementary versus large scale renovation to existing buildings, because and the site that's proposed, because they can build on that site and we can maintain the current buildings. Because that's really, I think, where those delays could hurt us is, there's a school year and we have to have kids in safe buildings, teachers in good environments. So I think that was part of the concept of versus, because we did have a discussion of major renovation of current buildings. But it was then decided out of the committee to go to the one elementary center. And we think we have the room right at Tecumseh Acres to do that
We
and
do.
still
We
maintain,
know we do.
to maintain a building there.
Correct.
And maintain school there.
Yeah, because the original idea was 2 buildings and it was more expensive. And then I even said, why can't it just be 1 building? And then the next time they came back with that design with 1 building and it saved a lot of money.
Right.
And it saves a lot of busing and
A lot of expenses in the
more
future.
Parents
cohorting
running
for
around all
staff
over
and
town.
it's just a lot.
right,
Seemed
right,
like
no,
a
I
good-
don't agree with the concept, it's just how do we pay for
But
it?
that's the main thing and that will get done and then whatever extra things can be on top of that, then, eventually
just
you
today
run
I
out
was
of
at-
money and that's why the roof looks like the way it does.
I was at Farm and
Right
Home
up
today and
here.
somebody saw me and started asking me about it and I
Yeah, it's
realized how
terrible right now, I
ignorant
know.
I was on the whole thing, so that doesn't bode well for trying to sell it.
Time to get educated.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine if we vote tonight to put it on the ballot, then our consultants will help us develop a board speaking points and a yes committee speaking points. They're separate. Rick can only inform. We as official board members should really only inform. And the yes committee is the one that kind of takes the selling the story kind of piece. So hopefully we can develop those, to your point, all of those key facts that when someone asks us a question, we all have the same bullet points and we're speaking the same, thing out to the public. But these are all, valid questions. Bonds are, if you're not Kelly, really complex to kind of understand and manage. So that's why we also have Kelly.
But we also have to keep in mind that this was brought to the board by a completely separate group. We didn't vote in it. It just really doesn't have anything to do with the board. They're coming to us with this recommendation and we're either gonna say, okay, we can try it or no.
I get it, I do,
Yeah.
but when I get asked questions,
Yeah,
I'd like to be able at least intelligently or somewhat, I don't have to know all the ins and outs, but certainly some, to this point, it's been don't ask, don't tell with this whole thing, It's run by a different group, committee, you're not part of it, just let it ride, and I'm not sure, people don't know who those committee members are, they know I'm on the board, especially if they voted for me, and so they deserve an answer.
So if we vote tonight, Mr. Hilderly, to put it on the ballot, can we have PFM come in for an educational session with the board?
Definitely, that's recommended by TMP, the company that would be assisting us in campaign. That board education is a big piece of making sure that we're ready for a campaign.
If we could have that in an open meetings forum, we should,
Oh, absolutely.
that public
have
can
to.
come to. or
Yeah, that's the way you did it before.
Yeah.
And then, but they're, they need some, they need to know we're willing to move forward
Yeah.
before they.
Who is PFM?
They're the bond people.
Okay.
The people that did
Does
that
that stand for,
presentation.
name the company, is it?
Yeah, they're in Ann Arbor.
But-
Not sure what the initials stand for.
Right.
But the same,
The architect did the high school too, same architect.
Yeah, but as at the time, it seemed like I had a better grasp of what was going on with that than I had this. Maybe because I would work for the school then, that's why we were.
Well, there's a strong community push on that.
Right.
PFM stands for Public Financial Management.
Oh, there you go. Catchy.
Financial Advisors in Ann Arbor.
so Greg, did you have all your questions answered?
I think so. Yeah. So I do. I like Tim said, the important thing is that before we ask somebody to vote for this, lay this out pamphlet, like when you buy a truck, okay, here's all the rebates, or you can take $2,000 rebates and zero financing for 60 months and blah, blah, blah. I just think we need to make sure that the public here knows exactly what all this means, because this isn't like your normal spreadsheet when you're dealing with bonds.
Oh, Lord, this is not something I would give to the public.
No.
No.
We would have.
But we don't
to-
want to hide anything from
No,
it. That's
no,
not
but
the
with
point.
same
Just-
numbers, but different presentation. Absolutely.
Equate it to what people do to their home. I mean,
Right.
people have been trying to take advantage of low interest rates and getting products when they can, anticipating that it's only going to go higher, and refinancing whenever possible. You just need to make that information parallel.
Everybody
Yep, I'm
good on
good.
that discussion item? Okay, let's move to the SRO agreement. Mr. Hilderly, I think you have some updates to the
A
contract.
couple of updates from the contract that was presented last time. Negotiated down the 180-day no cause out clause to a 90-day agreement, and adjusted the start date that I think had stated January 3rd, but now it says no later than April 1st. Now, a couple of things about the SRO agreement financially that I've been asked questions about. Later in the meeting under action items, we're going to hear about the budget revision, and we're actually going to ask the board to table that decision while we get more information. And the SRO agreement would be in that budget. However, the activities of an SRO would fit under the language of the 11T federal relief money. So this may not even be a general fund budget decision for at least the next 2 years. So the board can decide to move forward with the SRO agreement, understanding that it will be tucked into federal relief grant money, or because we are recommending putting off the budget revision until the next meeting on December 13th, the board could decide to also table the SRO agreement. And I bring that up because the language has been changed, that the start date is to be no later than April 1st. So we've got some cushion for what we are agreeing to tonight. If you move forward with the SRO agreement, it doesn't have to start until maybe as late as April 1st.
But he could still start in January?
He could start probably as early, according to Chief Coker, February 1st, because of their shift cycle runs about in a 4-week cycle, and they have to have that set in advance.
Gotcha.
So he's fairly confident that he could work it out for as early as February 1st if we approve, and then I believe that it comes up at the city meeting next Monday. If they approve, then we would move forward with the agreement and we could probably get started in February. If we delay because of these financial issues, then maybe it doesn't start until 1st of March. But it's related to their shift cycles and when Chad would be available.
Do the 11T funds have any requirements for public comment?
Yes. It's to have the same survey process that we have for ESER 3.
So we can't guarantee this evening that the funds are available through 11T until we finish that
That
survey?
is correct. Though if
What was your-
responses are similar to the ESER 3, there would be, but obviously that, I can't guarantee that.
Mhm.
What was your question?
So, ESER 2 didn't require any public comment, ESER 3 required public comment. So I was asking, does 11T require public comment?
Okay.
And she's saying, yes, it does. So we would have to take it to the public before we could guarantee that 11T funds could be utilized for it. But,
And
you
did
know,
do
we
a
got
survey?
something really, yeah.
Do a survey similar, well, probably exactly like the one we just collected information for.
And then you still have to submit your plan and then they have to approve it,
Correct.
correct? So even if we did a survey, doesn't mean they're gonna approve the plan.
Well, an 11T application isn't even available yet. I hear it's soon. But as of right now, it's not even available yet.
Be that as it may, that would be, while it'd be very nice if that covers it, I still think we need to move forward. Our administrators have made it clear that that would be a big help to them, take a burden off of them. And some of the things that have happened recently, it's just not a bad idea to have them around.
So what was the total general fund expenditure that we would need this school year?
Well, it depends on when this starts now.
Well, let's say February 1st. Let's say the earliest date.
And it would be, can you put half second?
So even if the money's not there in the budget, you're saying it's pretty much a shoo-in, we can do it through the ESSER funds.
I'm fairly confident that the federal relief funding would pay for the SRO. There are steps
Right.
that have to happen for me to be able to guarantee that. But it's my belief that it will fit under the requirements of that grant.
But the district has added positions already this year without us voting a budget revision. So we're not really outside of the norm necessarily, but if I remember correctly, it was.
No, we had already
If they
cleared the
start,
way
if
for it.
Chad started February 1st, it'd be approximately 36,700.
So one of the previous issues we had in the last board meeting that we discussed was the timing for the exit clause. Is everyone comfortable now with the new clause as it stands? Are there any
It's 90
questions
days.
about that?
90 days.
90 days is
90
the new
days.
language.
Thank you for that big improvement. Good negotiation. Any other questions on the SRO agreement before we move into action items?
One of the concerns I have is I like to know where the money's coming from ahead of time, not what if. And I know there's 3 people on the board who are part of the recall movement. And one of the things you want to do is bring up teacher pay, administrator pay. We have one pie. We seem to keep cutting it up into littler pieces. And it could be federal money, it could be grant money. We don't know that. If we put this into the 22-23 budget, then we can plan for it. I'm not sure that it has to be done, or I don't understand why it has to be done right now this year. Those are my thoughts, because then you can write a grant for it. You'll know ahead of time whether it's going to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we would know that we have a grant to fund that versus taking money out of operating funds, which right now we have a little hiccup with. So
We have brought pay up first. I mean, that was something we have accomplished.
Right.
But additionally, those administrators have asked for this. They've made it very clear that this is something that would be helpful to them. And if they're asking for it, and the things that we have seen and will be seeing, I just think we're fooling ourselves if we don't add this into our curriculum as a part of helping our school district. There are things out there that we didn't have to deal with before.
I know.
If we table this, Rick, can we, at the next board meeting, the city meets what, on the 1st and 3rd?
So they would-
Our next meeting is the 13th, theirs is the 6th, so they will have already acted.
Right, but I mean, but then after the 13th meeting, so it'd still be February 1 if we acted at the 13th meeting. And then
What will we know then that we don't?
The
know?
conversation,
budget, not losing all that money.
the conversation that I had with Chief Coker about the start date was based on this board accepting the agreement tonight and the city accepting it on the 6th. So I can't guarantee that February 1st would still be a good date if we acted a week later, but it seems reasonable.
And you'll know by the 13th? If we have
Know
the
what?
money?
I don't know if the 11T money is going to be guaranteed by then, but
What about just regular budget, money in the
the
budget?
budget revision should be ready by then.
Correct.
Okay.
Budget revision.
And there's a budget committee meeting this Wednesday, so that committee will have an opportunity to.
I mean, Becky's right. I agree with her 100%. I would like the presence here, especially after the last 2 years and a lot of the things that have gone on. And, you know, we could use the help. Administrators could use the help, but I'm not opposed to waiting till the 13th either, especially if I don't think that's going to delay the start date.
The only thing I would say to that is I think they would like some good faith from us this time because they've already approved it once and we came back and said, well, we'd really like this, we'd really like that. So, I don't know.
I mean, I kind of think we
I-
should do it and find
I would like to
money,
see it approved tonight.
but- Okay, I'm done yapping.
So from a procedural perspective, just to help everybody remember tabling, from a Robert's Rule of Order, someone needs to make a motion and a second. It is not debatable and it passes by just a majority vote. So if we are tabling one, possibly two issues, we should table them individually. And as we get to that item in the action list, someone can request a motion to table at that time. So, any more questions about, or we can also have discussion and debate during action items. So,
But we're definitely tabling the budget revision.
well, we,
That's our recommendation, but it's the first item under action.
Yeah.
so any more questions, needs of information, other things may pop into your brain between now and when we vote, so that's okay. Just want to confirm at this point. Are we good to move into action items? I've seen nodding of heads. Okay, so let's move into the first action item of the budget revision. Been a recommendation by Mr. Hilderly to table. Is anyone interested in making a tabling motion on budget revision?
I so move that we table the budget until the following meeting, which would be the 13th.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to table the budget revision. Mrs. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Simpson?
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to table passes for the budget revision. The next action item is the Building Futures Committee recommendation.
I don't, you know what? I don't
It's
have
not
that.
on there. I was just
It
looking at it.
isn't on there.
It's not
Neither
on
was the
there.
budget.
No, it's out of order.
I don't
So
even see it on here.
I'll make a motion to approve the Building Futures Committee recommendation as presented.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Building Futures Committee recommendation as presented by the Building Futures Committee at our last board meeting. Roll call vote. Mrs. Tomlin,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mrs. Brooks,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Building Futures Committee recommendation passes. Next is the policy change to move to Troon.
I hereby move to approve the change in our policy holders from Neola and board docs to Troon and board books.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to do the policy change to Troon and board book. Roll call vote. Mrs. Brooks,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes for the policy change to Troon and board book. Next is the SRO agreement.
I hereby move to approve the agreement as presented between the City of Tecumseh and TPS for the school resource officer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to vote on the SRO agreement. Any discussion?
What, I guess, what's worse now than 2 or 3 years ago? I mean, Becky's alluded to the problem. I guess I'm not sure what those problems are, what's going on in the schools that we need an SRO now than we did when I worked here.
We had to take the closed session off tonight, but we can't talk about it in the meeting. I apologize.
Okay.
But I think about our last closed session. I don't know that situation would have happened if we'd had someone here. And like Mr. Dolson asked the other day, they've had ongoing issues. I know Ms. Howard has had ongoing issues that have eaten up her time while she's dealing with things that the SRO could have been dealing with. And I know Mr. Dolson has multiple times. The situation he found himself in, there's just different things that we can't talk about in open meeting. I apologize, but there are things going on. And having a student in the high school, I'm telling you, there are things going on that I believe Chad and the rapport he had with his students is vital.
But I think,
There are other things I want to, but I truly feel that this is something that we do need.
so I think what's really critical though for us to remember as we vote on this SR agreement, we are not voting about this particular individual that is planning to fill it initially.
Right.
No, I know that.
So, so when we make statements about the very specific person that could sit in the chair, what we need to think about as the board is the contract, which I appreciate what Mrs. Brooks is saying, but I want that to be clear to the board before we vote, because we are entering into a 5-year.
One other question is, so the grant funding, or was it 11T, did you call it?
Right.
Do you have to have that in place before you can put them on staff, or I mean,
I think that
before you,
for tonight's vote, I think that the board should assume that this will be in addition to the general fund.
okay,
My strong feeling is that in the end, when we revise the budget again at the end of the year, that it won't be in the general fund.
okay.
But as we sit here tonight, I can't guarantee you 100%.
Right.
So I'm suggesting that you just go with the recommendation of the budget committee, which is to add it to the revised budget as a general fund expense.
As well as 11T won't cover the full length of the contract
And-
from a
and
budget perspective.
with the understanding that going forward, that there would be a grant that we use it for.
Each year, we'll do what
Right.
we can to make
Right.
sure that as
Right.
much of that agreement is covered by whatever grants are available at the time. But I think for tonight's vote, you would have to assume that this is
Potentially general
potential
fund
hit.
expenditure.
an addition to what will be the revised budget in 2 weeks.
And I'm confident with our committee that we can find those funds.
Any other debate or comment?
No. Let's go.
All right. It's been motioned and seconded to vote on the SRO agreement. Roll call vote, Mrs. Brooks,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
No.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Next is overnight stays for competitive cheer and wrestling.
I hereby move to approve the overnight stays for both competitive cheer and the wrestling team.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to vote on the overnight stays for competitive cheer and wrestling. Any debate or comments?
Have fun.
Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote. Mrs. Tomlin,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mrs. Brooks.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Overnight stays for competitive cheer and wrestling. Next is to accept the donation from Martin's Home Center of $300 for the THS robotics team.
I hereby move to accept with thanks the $300 donation from Martin's Home Center for the robotics team 3773.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to accept the donation from Martin's Home Center of $300 for the THS robotics team. Mrs. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Simpson?
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Last item is to accept the donation from FNS Landscaping of $100 to the THS robotics team.
I hereby move to accept with thanks the $100 donation from FNS Landscaping for the robotics team 3773. What is that? 3773.
It's
What's
their-
the
That's
other
their
number?
It's their team number.
Oh, okay. Like all the teams have a number?
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Big time deal. They have to have it on their,
Really?
robot and everything.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded to accept the donation from FNS Landscaping of $100 for the THS robotics team. Do a roll call vote. Mrs. Tomlin?
Aye.
Mr. Simpson?
Aye.
Mrs. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Brooks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Moving on to the consent agenda.
I hereby move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the following items. Minutes from the regular board meeting of November 8th, 2021.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Roll call vote. Mrs. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Simpson?
Aye.
Mrs. Tomlin?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Two items. If you look down below the superintendent's report, there are a couple of things listed as items scheduled for next agenda. One of them is the marketing plan. The budget committee made a proposal to set a budget for marketing and communications. They asked for a marketing proposal. This proposal will be presented to the committee on Wednesday. After the committee has had a chance to see it, it will be shared with the full board, and then will be on as a discussion item for the December 13th meeting. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Victor's done a very nice job putting that together. Superintendent's evaluation is listed as an item for next meeting. That'll actually fall to the December 20th meeting. Between now and then, I will provide you with a new self-evaluation. And just to remind the board, we did an evaluation in June that was actually for the 2020 calendar year. This evaluation will be for the 2021 calendar year superintendent's evaluation. Many of the items that are in the self-evaluation will be the same sorts of documents and documentation that was in the last one. But if there's something more that any of the members would like to see, please let me know. We'll try to have that be one of the very few items that we deal with on the 20th so that we don't have a long agenda. But that's the timing, just to get it done for this calendar year. And that's all I have.
Questions?
So can you give us a little update on student count thing? Because we've alluded to it tonight, so we probably need to talk about it. So.
Right, and that's, good for transparency.
Right.
The reason that we've put off the revision of the budget is that shortly after count day, we did a collection of what I would call head counters or seat count of the number of students who were in attendance were accounted for on that day. And my update to the board at that time was that the head count looked like it was about 10 students above what was budgeted, which is a good sign, because when you start chipping away at FTE related to different parts of students that we don't get credit for, you want to be a little bit ahead. And then people accounting and Kelly's budget report to me just before the Thanksgiving break was that audited student count was off by about 70 students. And I asked them for a report so that I can take that information to the budget committee on Wednesday to try to figure out why that is, and if there was a mistake, was it maybe done in error so that we don't have to account for those 70 students. Anyway, we'll have a full report from them, and I'll be able to advise the budget committee just exactly what the number is.
So we don't know for sure. We're pretty sure we don't have 70 we thought we had.
It appears that way, but again, my directive to Kelly and to the people accounting director was for a report on Wednesday. So I'm not going to put Kelly on the spot and ask her for an update at this time. We're going to get information and we'll have it ready for the
But the
budget.
information is gathered from, did they just recount it, or? You know, I mean, you kind of count once and you put all the numbers in, then you add the numbers up, and then you do it again and they add it up different?
Honestly, I haven't talked
We
to
don't
Alicia
know
about
yet.
why,
Okay.
so I don't even want to speculate
Okay,
at
sure.
the table why the difference. But I will know
Wednesday.
by Wednesday and be able to advise the budget committee and the full board for the meeting on the 13th.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so item scheduled for next agenda, right, give district marketing plan and superintendent evaluation. Will we add the FTE count?
Right, that, and then the items that the budget revision will be pushed forward. I guess that's it from this.
Closed session.
And
Or we
and
have
we
to do-
potentially will have a closed session added to the agenda as well.
And I know, don't we normally get a report before we have to go into closed session on why we're doing that? Or is that privacy thing that we,
Our email is foilable, so yeah.
okay, so,
Our email is foilable. so-
Right, we try to save it for the night of.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving into public comment in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of 1986, the board approves opportunity for citizen input during the public comment because agendas are full. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Not hearing of any requests from online and seeing no public here, we will move on to board member comments and discussion.
Well, I just think the swim team did pretty great. Hooray for Amelia Danley breaking a school record's always good.
Mhm.
That was great news. And I also loved it. I happened to see one of Victor's posts when I was gone and I read that book about balloons over Broadway and how creative the 5th grade staff was to have them, create their own balloons, their own float kind of a situation, how timely, how exciting that must have been for kids. Looked like a really neat activity. I love seeing positive news out there. So if anybody missed that, they should go back and look at that. I mean, why can't Tecumseh have its own Thanksgiving Day parade, right?
Sure,
I agree.
Mr. Swallow would have a different opinion of that, Mary, but
Well, and speaking of that, we could promote the community holiday parade coming up on
Oh,
Friday
yes.
at 7:00.
Mhm. Always a great time for
yeah.
Tecumseh to shine, and so many of our students are in
A lot
it
of
in
our,
so
a
many
lot of our
different
kids get
ways.
involved, right? The band will be there
That's this one.
this Friday,
This
7
Friday,
p.m.
7.
I'm always thankful that I don't have to build a float anymore.
It's the little things.
It is. I did enjoy it with kids.
Oh,
middle
I'm sure they'll
schoolers,
call you.
but-
They probably need some
Yeah,
pointers.
somebody might-
Right?
Yeah, you
Middle
should have said
schoolers
that now,
were
Mary. You're gonna get a
super
call.
fun at building floats.
comments. I think just from a board, of course, we send condolences to Mr. Rebatero on the loss of his mother. We've also had a family in the district lose a father to COVID, so we send our condolences to them as well. It is good news that the pool's back up and running, and that we all returned safely from Thanksgiving and other activities. So good to see you all back at the board table. So since we do not need to adjourn to closed session today, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.